I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hello, Foxy listeners. Welcome to the show today. I have a treat for you. She has so much energy and so much advice. I'm so excited in the few minutes that we were talking in the pre-show. Kerry-Ann, thank you so much for joining me today.
Tanya, I'm so happy to be here and your Foxy group of people.
So give everybody a little bit of background, because of course I've been sort of deep diving you, but let everybody know sort of your story.
Yeah, well, I'm what you call a recovering attorney.
I love that saying.
And, so I come from Washington, D.C. attorney and lobbyist and a fundraiser. And, I started my business full-time, went full-time into the business about 2014. And I love what I do. I work with small and medium-sized business owners who really want to build a business that lasts and they want to run it smoothly. So, they don't want to like chaos. So that's kind of what I do. I come from that world of DC, and now I'm loving working with small business owners.
So what made you decide to be a recovering attorney? What was the sort of catalyst to go, I'm out?
Yeah, I know. It's a really good question. Truth be told, I actually do love the law, and I sometimes do miss it. But when I was so I was an attorney in Washington, and then I was doing lobbying, and then there was this great opportunity to be a part of building the Washington D.C. Martin Luther King Memorial. And I had a background in large scale, high level fundraising, and they invited me to come on board. And, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll just do it for 2-3 years. And I head back into the law, like 8 years later.
The best laid intentions, right?
I know. And by that time I had really, loved meeting the people that I was meeting. At the time, I was doing a lot of speaking, even outside of my role in the foundation, and helping people create strategy and so forth. So, it just sort of was a natural. I'm telling you, it's the same thing, Tanya. You go on one fork and you think you're going to come back and then go through the other. But really, the truth, once you go to the right, there's going to be other forks to walk through, and that's kind of how it went. So I never went back to being a lawyer, but I love it. And I'm not one of those people who are like, no, thank God I'm out of it. I actually do miss it, but I think I've found my calling.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit, because I really wanted to have you on the show because, I wanted to talk more for those business owners who've been in it for a little bit, which is a large part of the audience that I get, because there is sort of this system and this sort of symptom of chaos that seems to happen with them. So can we talk a little bit about that to help those ones? Because I feel like sometimes we always hear about the beginning, right? Like, here's how to recover. Here's when you're really big. And then all the people in the middle are like, okay, it's like the middle child syndrome. They're like, we're just forgotten about.
Exactly it. And I'm a middle child. But you're so right. It's like there's no middle. I agree. I love that. To me, I love that group of business owners, because in the beginning stages, it's sort of fun and, I'm learning this, I'm doing this, whatever. And also the percentages of growth are much faster, right? You're like, look, I have 100% growth, and, that kind of thing. In the middle stages, when you're sort of been there for a bit, there can be some feelings of, well, I'm not growing that much, not as much as I was early days, at least percentage wise. And there is definitely a feeling like well, can I walk away from the business? Because I'm really, really in it now. And everyone's here to think, oh, work on your business, not in your business. The reality is most people are straddling that fence. And so, they're feeling those feelings. And then there's also folks who, really do want to scale. They've grown quite a bit, but their expenses have grown at the same rate as their
Yeah.
revenues. So, the growth is good, but now they really want to start scaling and, moving past the expenses. And they're like, how do we do that? And then I think too, this is a stage where, folks are just like, they built a team early on. That team might have worked real well, but right now it's not working because they're growing. How do you,
Yeah.
keep your loyal team members, get them energized, but making sure people are sitting on the right bus? It's really an interesting stage, I think, of business. And it can get people feeling frustrated, even though they love their business, but they can feel frustrated and start saying, is this what I mean? Because they're in it now, right? They're
Yeah.
vested.
Is
The
this what it's
whole
going to be? And I think it's true, especially with, as you grow, a lot of people, they have that growth that happens. But everything grows, profit grows and expense grows straight together. So the bottom line, like, I'm still kind of making the same amount.
exactly.
It's just more
This is
numbers
more
I have
headache.
to put into the calculator. Right. And I think that is sort of when, that I see with, clients and people that I work with, that's when almost the passion gets lost, because they
Yes.
almost, now they're sort of stuck in the day to day. And then, like you were saying, it causes them to kind of go, so this is it.
So this is it. So this
Yeah.
is it.
This is our marriage. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What is that meme on Instagram? I'll stand by him.
Yeah. 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 That's my man. Love him.
That's
Yeah.
my man. Well, I think, and I know to be true, and I want to just say to anyone who's feeling the feelings right now, and you're like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Look, you can get out of this rut. You can get out of the middle child rut, the middle years. A large part about scaling is really knowing when it's time to scale. And
Right.
I feel that one of the big things that you can kind of tell if it's time for you to scale is if you have a strong, consistent client acquisition process. If it's just running real well, and that's a good time to start scaling, right? If you notice that your messaging is hitting a particular audience, a particular customer, if you have some loyalty there, it's time to scale. Now, the question is, and how do you do it? Well, the first thing is to really think about your systems. If you can automate as many things as possible, and then a lot of people are like, well, no, I've automated everything. The rest of it is us, it's touch. Like, yes, it is touch, but what else can you automate? There's always more. I can't tell you. I have had conversations with some of the businesses that have they've done the thing, they've done the systemized, that like, we have done it and it is the best we can. And you go in and you just as an outsider can go in and say, what about this? Can you systemize this? They're like, oh, well, we didn't really think we could. Let's see how we can do it. So start with just systems. And if you don't have, if you don't have any system, obviously everyone has some systems, but if you have, if there aren't any real hardcore systems in all of the ways that you do your business, then start asking your team to start writing down what they're doing on a regular. Okay. And then you look at it and say, what part of those things that they do on the regular is repetitive? Anything that's repetitive can be systemized. It may be easier to systemize some things than others, but anything that's repetitive can be systemized, Tanya. And that's your first real way to get into it. And why systemize? Because what's the biggest cost in business? It's your employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can find a way to be able to, any of the repetitive tasks that your team is doing that you can systemize, then you can use them, and use their skill sets to be able to do other things that really can't be systemized or that are higher level or higher revenue generating. So that's the first real step, is just sort of, and do it yourself too, if you're the owner, because I know some of y'all are working in the business all kinds of ways. So,
But I think that that's key. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss is going to their team and saying, hey guys, tell me what you think, right? We forget to go back to the ground floor and go, you tell me, what are things that you're like, oh my God, if I have to do this thing one more time,
right.
right? Like we forget to go, these are the people that are going to tell you the quickest, here's
Yes.
what you should do,
Here's
and
what
I'm
you should
not
do.
saying that they're all golden, but
Mhm.
however,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
telling you. And look, here's the thing too. I love I think building a team is one of the joys that you get to do as a business owner, because you're really bringing in all of the capacities of humanity together to be able to make something happen. And most people, if you're hiring well, most people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Yeah.
yeah.
And they also want to see the thing thrive because they're a part of it. It's their blood, sweat, and tears as well. So if you say, hey guys, okay, we really want to scale, we want to be able to see this. And then, there's a couple of tools out there. There's one tool that you can use, like Trainual. I don't know how many folks are using it, but it's a great SaaS product out there in the market. It's literally manual, but with a train. And there's really great ways you can create. You can add GIFs in there, or GIFs, however you pronounce the word. You can have videos in there, so it doesn't have to be just writing down what you do on a day-to-day. I mean, sometimes that is what you need to do depending upon what the role is of that person in your team. But you can have them videotape what they're doing. There are a couple of things that are on the market right now where if it's more word processing or more computer type based, you can download it as a as a plugin, a Google plugin, and it will track what tasks you do. Like literally, I went to click file, I opened file, I typed the file, and it will register all of that. So you don't have to like have someone typing in and saying, this is what I do, and then you download that into your list of, here's what we do, to be able to do it. And so once you get all of those things done as best as you can, I mean, if you are like for instance, if you have a business that's sort of like maybe a cleaning company, for instance, maybe you guys clean offices, or maybe your company is like more manual, so maybe they cut lawn or whatever. If it's things like that, there are little chips they can add to like for instance the machines that they use or the tools that they use, and that can track what it is that you're doing. So the best way you can make it easy and simple for you to be able to track what it is that you're doing, then you can kind of go back and look at the data and be like, oh, well, this is very repetitive. We have to be able to find a way to make that more systemized. And that's your first real big step.
Well, and I think that's key because, not only having that information, but talking to people, because sometimes what comes across on information, you sort of need the human touch or human background. And I remember doing this and people going, well, it takes you, this long on, these particular types of calls. And it wasn't until we talked to the employees, they're like, yeah, but this is a chatty person. Like, they need hand holding, but it's just the type that they are, right? Like they need that extra, they have some extra questions, but that also helped us to go, okay, well, maybe on some of those things, let's create something that they can then go to and learn themselves, So it was those things that you can kind of dive into a little bit deeper and grow as you go along to create those things where you can go, hey, just go here.
Yeah. And you might find, and too, like you want to check to see, that's the other part of this whole figuring out how to scale is, for instance, that client might be a chatty client, but they might, when you start looking at what they're purchasing and how often they're purchasing, they may have the highest lifetime value of any of your other clients. So if they want to chat about their dog, you chat about their dog.
Yeah.
How is Fluffy? You send birthday presents to Fluffy because I mean, but then the data, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of figure out, okay, maybe you don't need, in order for you to scale, maybe you don't need to bring in a whole bunch of new clients. Maybe it's identifying the types of clients that have a high LTV, right? You don't have to now spend all this money on marketing and sales, blah, blah, blah. And that the ones that keep coming back, and you just pour into that, next thing you know, you don't really need any more clients. You're just getting more money, but a cost you're looking in for marketing and all those other things can go down.
Right.
Or, so there's ways that you can look at, once you get the data, you can now decide, oh, wait, this is how we can scale. You might have a product line that is not doing anything for you. Even if it's your most popular product line, it may be so time intensive and so that it's just not really worth it for you to be able to produce it or to sell it. So I think once you get that data, it gives you more information to decide, okay, you want to be able to decrease the profit, the margin between your growth. And again, that depends on you, because some industries have real profit margins, really big ones, and others don't. So then you have to think about other ways to do it. I didn't realize it. Did you know that in the airline industry, the profit margin is like less than 1%?
Yeah, I remember reading that just recently somewhere. And I was like, why do people keep getting into this?
Why would they?
Well, I want them to, because I still want to fly. But yeah,
Right.
And I'm a number person. I'm like, oh, make no sense.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can take that. But the banking industry, it's almost 100%. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we all feel that one too, I think.
We do feel it, don't we?
So I think sometimes what happens too, and answer me if you find this, is that sometimes people feel like getting into that automation, they worry that, is it going to be too much? Are people going to lose that human interaction? And that is going to be what affects my business. So they just sort of stay where they are.
Yeah, I think that's a good enough fare. And I think too, with AI coming about and such, there's a lot of fear around, are we, what's going to happen? What's the future look like? Your business. Everyone, if you've got savvy business owners listening to this podcast, so they know their business. They know what type of business they want to have. So I would say, first things first, if it's been, when was the last time you did a strategic plan? If it's been more than 2 years since you've done a strategic plan, let's start with that. Let's do a strategic plan and kind of, figure out where you are. And I would say, if you're having a team, if you have a team more than 2 or 3, you definitely want to bring the team in on it. Early days, you do your plan and it's just sort of like you.
Yeah.
But, do an offsite.
This is what we're hoping.
So I think that would help you. So then you can kind of think about what's your core strategic goal right now, when you start looking 15, 20 years out in the future. But you can also kind of figure out a bit more to reiterate to yourself, what's the business model that you are? Does this business model still work for you? Because things are changing so quickly that, the business model that you built when you first started the business may not be the business model that's going to carry you through to get you where you want to go in terms of scaling. So, and sometimes it's just a simple tweak, Tanya. It's not like, oh, I'm going to blow the business up and start again. But it may need for some tweaking there. But
well, and I think sometimes it's just having somebody else come in and go, oh, this is really cool. Like, why aren't you talking about this? Right. Because that other person sort of gives you an outgoing, this is this is amazing. Like we need to do something about this.
Absolutely.
But also looking at, if it's something that you're like, I feel like I'm automating too much. I mean, I looked at things and went, okay, I don't really want to automate this, but then can I delegate this? So it's not necessarily us talking about this, but I can get, maybe someone else that is going to be able to service them in this way. So I'm not losing that human touch.
Yes. And I think too, there are some things that you can systemize that don't require complete automation. So for instance, there are so many tools out there, like in your sales conversations. Do you find that if you have a salesperson in your business that's selling for you, or if you're selling, there are some basic general questions that people ask. Yes. So right now, if you can automate those questions or the answers to those questions, so that your sales team isn't having to type it out completely. They can just click and it sends out. So you can, it's still high touchy, but it's systemized. So how much time would you be able to each minute that you save in your team, the more the gap is between, creating that margin.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
it's not always just saying, like, yeah, well, my business is built on a high touch business. Well, mine is too. But there are a lot of things and systems and processes that I put in place that are very much automated, that create some margin between the cost of running the business and the part of growing. Because in the end, I mean, again, if it's working for you, it's working for you, leave it be.
Mm-hmm.
But if most people come and they're like, yeah, I want to grow, I want to scale, I've been growing, I want to scale, I need more revenue coming in, more profits, then this is the way to do it. And also too, Tanya, it's about like making sure that the less you are required to be in your business, the more ability that you are able to scale.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that, because we're talking about that, but I think sometimes people get confused or find it's a fine gray line that they've created between scaling versus growing. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you feel the difference is between those two?
Yes. So the difference is when one is growing, and I'm telling you, growth is a good thing. Growth is a good thing. At a certain stage of the business, early days, one must be growing. So it's about bringing in as much revenue, as much customers or clients that you possibly can into the business. The thing around growth is that most times when you are growing, the cost of doing business is going to grow along with you. You've got to hire more staff. You've got to, have more supplies to be able to produce. There's a lot more growth. So therefore, while you are doing this, your revenue, your profits, your costs are also doing it at the same rate. So therefore, it's not really getting you the differences in the profits is not the same. It's the same. Okay. When you are scaling, it's kind of an economies of scales. When you're scaling, the revenue that you are bringing in can be 10, 20 times more than the costs. So you want to you're never going to keep the costs completely low. Of course, in some industries you can, like, with technology industries or staffs, you invest in the beginning, all the money in the beginning. And then once, you may have updates in the software, but for the most part, it's now about scale. But if you're having service-based companies or other sort of companies that don't have the money invested at the beginning, but it's all going at the same time, then you really do want to be able, and again, you don't have to scale like a Facebook or whatever. It's about how you want to scale. I think it's important for owners to own their own journey. But it's the difference between the cost that it takes to grow and the result of the growth. You want to have a big margin between the costs and the revenue as you scale. So that means that keeping costs low is the name of the game. Now, how do you keep costs low? You don't want to, skimp on quality. You skimp on how much it takes to be able to produce the product that you're able to grow with. Okay. So then that means you're going to create systems. You're going to look at what it is that it takes the staff to, how long does it take the staff to do certain things. You're looking at, you can even scale on the flip side. It's sort of weird. If you add value to the product that allows the product to be more valuable, but doesn't increase the cost, that can be a part of scaling as well. So, but the general gist, I think the idea here is growth is when your expenses are growing at the same rate as your revenue. And again, that's a good thing early days because you want to be growing.
Yeah.
However, when it's time to scale, and those triggers for scale can be, one, you have a strong client acquisition process, your messaging is right, you have a loyal consumer base, those kinds of things, you can tell, okay, yeah, we're pretty solid on this side. And you can then start saying, okay, how can we then increase the profit margin keep costs low, keep revenue high, and increase it, that's where you start looking.
And I think we see this a lot, in especially in service-based businesses where they start as a one-to-one model and then move more into a group model. So you're still offering the same service, you're just kind of hitting more people all at once.
Yes.
Right? Because there's
Yes.
only so much
Yes.
time you have, so many hours you want to be in
Yes.
that a day. And I think this is a good thing for people to sit down and look at, because I don't know of one person who got in business because, they wanted to work hard and consistently and 12, 14 hours days for the rest of their life. Like, we all had that dream of starting our business and having it run while cash goes into the bank while we're on a beach or while we're
Exactly.
traveling or right.
Exactly.
But we get in, and I think, there is that, wide-eyed dream. Like you said, when you first start out, I remember any new project I start out in or any new
Yes.
business, it's exciting, right? You're like, oh,
Yes.
this is so cool. I'm really excited to play with this and I want to do stuff
Yes.
with this. And then you're like, played this game a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate this. And too, you're talking about this new project, and I think that's probably one of the things when you start thinking about scale. Um, I would just to bring it, I guess, down to earth a bit. There can be some challenges around. That's why there can be some challenges when you start scaling, right?
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons why you want to kind of look to see, um, if you have some stability in the business that will allow for you to scale, even if you are a product-based company, that your supply chain works well. Because I was having a conversation with a woman, and she has this great product for pets, and she's having conversations with one of the major retailers that wants to bring her product in. And obviously that would be a huge coup for her, great feather, and it will help her scale the business. However, there are 4 suppliers that she works with to make her products work.
Right.
And so now she has to be able to see if those suppliers can even fulfill the quantity of what this large retailer is asking for. Can they deliver it at the time that she needs for them to deliver it? Okay.
Right.
And does she have the upfront cash to put out there in order to secure all of the supplies and materials she will need to make sure that she can get the stuff delivered on time to the customer, to the retailer? So these are things that one must consider when saying, okay, am I really ready to scale? Because to be honest, scaling too soon is a huge problem. And then it comes down to inability to fulfill the customers, and also a cash flow problem. Because if you're putting all this money out in order to be able to provide the service or the product or whatever it is, money's going to come back, that. But if you don't have the cushion, then you're kind of in a pickle. And so
Yeah. So
that's why it's really
you
important.
end up throwing yourself into that thing where now you're constantly playing catch up because
Yes.
you've
Yes.
thrown out all of that stuff and you're like, okay, well, here's
Mhm.
hoping.
Here's a hoping. Here's a hoping. So I think it's really important for people to kind of spend some time assessing their business. And if you're not, like, if you don't have some amount of cash flow forecasting in the business that you currently have, now's the time to start looking at that. Start looking at what is your profit margin, and over your period of time, what products are bringing you the highest profit margin. Which ones do you think you could sort of rely upon to create some scale in the business? What kind of systems you can put in place? That way you can start, preparing yourself for it. Don't rush too fast into it. But I do think that, if you have a seasoned business and you're a seasoned business owner, it's time to really start looking at how to scale.
Well, and I think, like you said, redoing that strategic plan is really important because it sort of ignites that passion again, that you're like, okay, here's something new that, that we can try and do, but also too helps you to let go. I mean, I know I've been stuck in that in some businesses that, go, well, no, we can't get rid of that. Like that's what we started with, that's our
Yeah.
thing,
That's
but
our
like you
thing.
said, when you do the numbers, you're like, this is a sucky thing, like, but I had emotional attachment, so I kind of kept it. I'm like, why am I
Yeah.
keeping this,
Why do I keep doing this?
But it needed somebody else to come in and go, look, here's the numbers, because I'm very much a number person. Here's why it doesn't make sense. Like, here's how
Right.
much it's actually doing for you. And then
Right.
it was like, okay, yeah,
Okay.
fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Goodbye.
kick it out. Time for it to move out. Fine, fine, fine. I get it. But
And if you
it's
gotta,
hard.
it's really, really hard. I mean, if you need to have like a little ceremony to depart, and whatever you need to do to release it, because it's balancing between, why are you in business,
Yeah.
right? We're in business to a business is an entity that allows to generate value for us, and there's value for many stakeholders, not just yourself, but your customers. Your customers are now relying on you for the thing that you do, right? You've gotten a group of people who are vested in your business existing. Your employees, they're a stakeholder, right? You are a stakeholder. Your community, and where you pay taxes, is a stakeholder. So you start looking at all the people that rely on you and your business. This is not a hobby. This is a thing, right?
Yeah.
So yes, we have an emotional attachment to the product we started with, but when we start looking at it, if it's not working, it's not working.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
think
time to
being
say
willing
goodbye.
to also let go and go, it's a good thing that your business can run without you, right? I think sometimes people kind of go through that, like, you can live without me. Like, this could run. The world isn't going to fall apart when I die. Like, right? Like, and I deal this with clients a lot who are like, I just like, I want to move on. This isn't, they have a business and they're like, this just isn't what I want to do. I want to start something new. And I'm like, close. And they're like, but I can't. Like, I'm in the community. I'm like, I promise you. Somebody said something on Instagram. They were like, think of Queen Elizabeth. When was the last time you thought of Queen Elizabeth? Like, and then they started listing all of these amazing things she did throughout her whole life. They're like, so here's a woman who accomplished so much over her career, pretty much had a business since she was 19 years old, like, and a huge business.
Yeah.
How often have you thought of her? And I was like, maybe a couple of times. They're like, yeah. So what makes you think that if you just disappear, like, something else will, like, other stuff happens, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yes.
pulls at your heartstrings a little bit, right? Because you
Yes.
do kind of want the world to stop and your community to be like, where did she go? We can't live without her. But it's not reality, right? Like, it is
I know.
okay to move on. But there's still that. I think that you're like, no, they'd fall apart.
It's so interesting you should say that, because I remembered so I split my time between the US and Spain, and my flat in Madrid is in the center. So after COVID, there were a couple of businesses that no longer were around, and these were like, there were some shops that they had been around for like ever, and you're just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to exist without the shop being there? And they closed down. Everyone was like, oh my god. And then eventually a new shop came in, and you're like, this is such a cool shop. Have you seen this new this
Look how exciting this is. Yeah.
So I think that's that. But I also think too, um when we build a business and where we are, the business is an entity outside of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
As the owner, we are the caretaker, we are the chief strategist, but it's an entity outside of ourselves. And if we put investment into it and build it in a way that we could then sell it or pass it on, then in theory, what we're doing now doesn't ever die. There's so many companies. Every large company that we see that's been around for a bit was once a tiny, small company like ours. So you can build something that can last if that's what you want to do. Again, it requires that ability to say, it's not your baby, right?
Yeah.
It's not your baby, but it is something that's important to you. I've heard various different people call it whatever. I heard Jay Abrahams call it your hedge fund, right?
Right.
Like, this is your hedge fund. You invest in it in a way to keep it going. You water it, you do the thing, but in the end, it's outside of you, and build it in a way that you can sell it or pass it on and you can walk away.
Yeah. Because I think that's, I always think of it as like, a child. I'm going to raise this and grow this, but eventually I want it to move out. Like, I don't want to be in my golden years, in my retirement years, still taking care of this infant, who is dependent upon me.
Yes.
I want
And
it to like,
me dry.
yeah, I just want it to like leave and then every now and then be like, hey, here's some money that you loaned me a long time ago. Like, I'm gonna,
Exactly.
But I think I think it's being okay with both sides of the coin, because you can sometimes that closure of a business reinvent something else, or it's a new growth for somebody else, or it's a new growth for that, that person that you don't realize at that time. And I think COVID was a big thing for that. We saw a lot of things close, but I also in the background saw a lot of sighs of relief, because it almost gave people that permission to reinvent themselves and go, let's create something new. Let's do something crazy, because we could just be like, oh, COVID took it out.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Totally wasn't me.
COVID. It was COVID. It wasn't me.
I was delightful.
Another thing that someone can do if you're thinking about scaling too, Tanya, is think about a lot of, I don't know, small businesses don't think like this, but is bringing in new ideas, innovative ideas in the company by buying another company.
Right.
Right. I mean, you can reinvigorate the company and you can scale the company by buying another company. So if you think, because and that goes back to product formulation. Are you constantly listening to the needs? Because the needs of your audience, of the needs of your customers, because your needs change over time. So what you can do is think, okay, if you keep listening to what the needs of your customers are, and it's cyclical, then you can say, okay, well, it looks like they're needing this now. I'm going to, instead of sending them away once they need that need, bring it in, buy a company, bring in some folks, have a whole, and there's many ways you can be innovative. One is buying a company for sure. Another way is to literally have someone on your team that's all about the innovation. Mm-hmm. So they're constantly looking and seeing what's new, what else can we add. Once, of course, I believe with innovation, it must be innovation and optimization, optimizing what you already have and then innovating. But you can reinvigorate a company by just simply bringing in new ways of thinking.
Yeah. And I think it's so true. I think I deal with this a lot when I, do collaborations with companies and go, hey, at the start, this might be just something that you guys share, that you're like, hey, if I ever need somebody that needs this service, I'm going to send them to you. Let's kind of strike a deal between each other. Right. I've done that numerous times. And then, I had once where it turned into me going, okay, I'm just going to absorb you now. Right. Like they're like, I kind of want to go. And I'm like, I'll take you. Like, it's just working really well. Like, let's, but I think people don't think like that. Right. I think we're starting to get back there. I feel like, everything that happened over the last 3 years, I feel like before that, I felt like everybody was kind of very singular. At least they were like in my world, where it was like, okay, I've got to like concentrate on me or whatever. And I'm finding like teamwork and people working together. I'm seeing a lot more companies like kind of go, hey, you know what? Like, let's sort of connect each other and grow together, So I think this is the perfect time to people to start looking at these sort of ideas and going, hey, what do you think would be like perfect? Or what, like you said, listening to when people are like, what are they asking for that you don't have? And is that something that would make sense for you to start providing for them?
Yeah. And listening, and then the things that they are complaining about, that's a really good, the things that your customers are complaining about, that whenever someone says, oh man, I did this thing and I wish, I'm like, write that down on their list of things, because then you can, because we're lucky, particularly if you're like a service-based industry where you're actually speaking to your customers all the time, or your team is speaking to your customers all the time, or they're calling in for whatever. It's a great way to learn more about the needs of your customers. And so, they're not,
and that's an easy thing to get people to talk about.
Yes.
What's upsetting you today? They'll go off. They'll tell you everything.
Go off. And you just start like, oh, I could fix that. I could fix that. I just, what's the guy's name? Oh gosh, I forgot his name, but he's one of the, big business gurus out there. And he says, basically he's like, this is what business is. You ask someone what they need, you go get it, and then you give it to them.
But it's true.
You have the luxury of being connected to people who are already buying from you. Ask them what they need. What are they concerned about? What's their biggest thing? And figure out if you can make that work in your business. Or you might develop another business, right, for that particular service. One of my good friends, he said, I hadn't spoken to him in a little bit. We were early days in our business when we were friends, and then we kind of, didn't speak a lot, and then we connected again. And he basically said that, he was noticing that his customers had these 3 primary needs, and he was referring them to other businesses to do it. And they were always coming back to him and be like, oh, I did go back there and they, they messed it up. And he was just like, well, this is really, putting a kink in my whole, thing, because it's giving his reputation as being referring people to, bad services.
Bad things, yeah.
So he basically built those services into his business, but they are separate businesses. So it's still his own. So whenever a customer needs that, he sends them there. That business provides the service, but it's all his anyway. And it just works really well. So I do think that, again, about scale, there are many ways to scale. One can be creating another service, business, product that can provide the needs, meet the needs of your existing customer in a way that the profit margins are pretty big.
And how great would that be to be your own referral service?
Yeah.
I'm going to refer you to the best person I know. It's me. No, exactly. I'm not going to tell you that, but it's me. So you have a free ebook gift, The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. Talk to us a little bit about this. Give everybody an idea of what this is.
Absolutely. So it's basically my brain dump after having spent a number of years working with small and medium-sized businesses. You know how sometimes it can feel when you're running a business that, you're trying to manage a crazy, tornado, a chaotic tornado. So this book basically outlines what I consider to be the 8 true chaotic reasons, the fundamental reasons why someone might be feeling as if they're trying to manage a chaotic tornado. And it downloads those 8 components, and then it gives you some ideas on how to begin to sort of fix them. And so it's it's just my wisdom coming from a number of years working with small and medium-sized businesses. So if you're feeling as if you're in the middle stages, the middle child stages of your business, and you're feeling a bit like there's something wrong, it's not working, download it. It's a quick read. And I think you might identify at least one thing that you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And then start working on it.
Perfect. Well, we're going to make sure we have the links to that, as well as everywhere that people can find you and connect with you to learn more, because I know that there's going to be people out there who are nodding their head the whole time, who are like, yes, testify. That is me. I'm feeling that to the depths of my soul. So we'll make sure we have all of those. Kerry-Ann, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and just giving us a lot to sort of, sit there and decide, are you in a growth or are you in a scale?
Yeah, Tanya, what a pleasure it's been to be here. Love your energy, and hey, have a fantastic day, huh?
When you first get into business, like Kerry-Ann and I were talking about, it's exciting. It's rejuvenating. It's something that you're like, oh, I can't wait to do this. And you kind of hit that middle part, and it can feel a little chaotic. It can feel, a little humdrum. You can, sometimes kind of not know which direction you want to go in. And that's why I think it's so important, when you're feeling like that, is to find somebody that you can bring in from the outside to really take a deep dive in your business. And this can be somebody like Kerry-Ann, who's going to be able to come in and go, you know what, let me help you out. Let me show you where you're going. Because no matter what it is that you do, it's really, really hard to do that for yourself. And I have found this for years. When I first started my business, I tried to do that for a few years and it didn't work. And I realized how valuable it was to have a coach, to have a consultant, to hire somebody else or another team to come in and go, hey, look at this from an outsider's perspective and tell me what it is that you think. So if you connected with Kerry-Ann, if you were just feeling the words that she was putting down, I strongly urge you to head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.com. Click on blogs at the top of the page. You will see this lovely episode, a little bit more information about Kerry-Ann, and all of the links where you can connect with her, as well as get the free ebook, The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. So you're going to want to make sure you go out and get that if you do nothing else. So no matter what it is that you're doing today, make sure that you take time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?